Welcome to our Kiwanis Club in Spanish Fork. My name is Doug Lund. We would really like to thank Macy's Food Store in Spanish Fork for hosting us today. We have our meeting at the Macy's Food Store. They have a little lunchroom and a place where we can meet. We really appreciate them, and we also really appreciate Channel 17 and for them coming down during the lunch hour. We have a special guest who we'll introduce in a moment. John Michael will now come up and introduce our guest here today.
Folks, we're in for a treat today. Thanks for coming out and spending some time with us with your lunch hour. And we understand and appreciate how valuable your time is, and we promise to make real good use of it. Folks that are watching, we're in for a treat today. Let me tell you, I've got the pleasure to introduce a great friend of mine. Dr. Russ is a fellow who's been in therapy for 15 years as a therapist. And he darn well knows what he's talking about. He's participated in a lot of things in life, including breaking a world's record. He's an avid cyclist, having ridden multiple century rides. It's 100 miles plus at a time. He's the author of Playing 20 Questions with Your Fiancé and Nature or Nurture. Either way, it's your parents' fault. 6 Steps to Overcoming Adversity. He has his master's degree in mental health counseling and a doctorate in clinical psychology. And all of this, with his experiences, has allowed him to study quite in depth and understand human behavior and relationships. Dr. Russ today is going to help you and all of us here to discover how we can improve our relationships to achieve success and influence in our lives. You learn how to use your network and overcome roadblocks to be more successful in college, business, in your careers, even in volunteering in a community as we do here. We'd love to hear from him. He's got a great good stuff to share with us. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Russ Gady.
Thank you, John Michael. Appreciate that. So how many of you enjoy meeting new people and creating new relationships? Now, with relationships often come misunderstandings. If you've ever been misunderstood in a relationship, say yes. Yes. Now, sit for a moment and connect with the feeling of being misunderstood in a relationship and how it affected that relationship. Now, imagine driving down the road, quiet car, spouse next to you, your child in a car seat behind you. For me, it was my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's now 19. By the time she was 3, and we're driving down the quiet road, just enjoying ourselves. Now, I have Tourette syndrome, a neurological disorder causing motor and vocal tics. And with Tourette's comes a lot of misunderstandings. Now, back to the car. As we were driving down, I had a vocal tic, and I yelled, "Hey!" And I think that's probably the first time my daughter had ever heard me vocalize. And from behind me, a sweet little voice said, "Hey, hey what, Daddy?" Now, I thought, wow, how do I describe to a 3-year-old a neurological disorder? What do you say? And I thought, well, I don't want to say nothing because that would minimize everything that I've gone through over life, the teasing, the hard times. And I want her to realize that she can be open and honest and talk to me about anything that she experiences in life. And so that she realizes that being open and honest in relationships strengthens the thread that connects us all together. For there's a Chinese proverb that says, there's a red thread that connects those who are destined to meet, regardless of time, place, or circumstance. It may tangle and stretch, but will never break. Now, relationships are more important than we think. Oftentimes we think business relationships are business relationships and home relationships are home relationships. But have you ever thought what is the difference between a business relationship and a personal relationship? It's really only context, right? Because we still need to learn good communication skills. We need to connect. We need to work together and collaborate. And we need to see what the benefit is and how we can benefit each other in a positive way. And that's what I'm going to talk about today are the 3 C's of authentic relationships. Those being connectivity, collaboration, and consequence. Now, with collaboration, with connectivity, that's how we connect. That's where relationships begin. And think about the last relationship that you started. Either a friend or business. And how did that connectivity work and get pulled together? Because as Carl Jung, psychologist from way back with Freud, he said, the meeting of 2 personalities is like the meeting of 2 chemicals. If there's any reaction, both are transformed. Well, my belief is just by meeting somebody, our life can be changed. Just by seeing somebody, our life is often changed. Think about the last time you pulled into a parking lot and somebody was asking for a handout, for money, for help. Whether you helped them or whether you did not, was your life changed? I'll say yes. And so is his or hers. Because if you did help them, it made a difference in their life. If you didn't help them, and enough people don't help them, they're probably going to find another corner to ask for help. And so both lives are transformed and changed. Now, the other part of connectivity is the roles that we play. We play many roles throughout life. But whether it's in business, whether it's in your family, whether it's just friendships, whether it's in the Kiwanis Club, there are different roles that we play. There's the co-equal, there's the boss, and then there's the employee, looking at from a business standpoint. From a family standpoint, there would be the sibling, the parent, and the child. But looking at it from a business standpoint, co-equals. We work together. No one's a boss over the other one. We work together to form projects and get things done. And then there's the boss, where there's a little bit more authority there, isn't there? And the boss is more in charge, or hopefully is, right? And then there's your part as the employee. Can you play all 3 parts? We do. Even as a business owner, I play all 3 parts. Because who turns out to be my boss? Yeah, my clients. Those that come in and I provide service for. So how do we manage those 3 different types of relationships? Do we manage the way that we want to be managed? Or do we manage the way that, oh man, I never want a boss like that? Hopefully we manage the way that we want to be managed. Because that's really where we start benefiting each other and start really collaborating. Excuse me. Because with the connectivity, we all have that innate desire to build relationships, whether it's friends or clients or people that in various clubs that we're part of. So thinking about from that standpoint, just on connectivity, working with youth. How do we help youth learn to connect in a way that they can enjoy Because there's power in relationships. There's power in connecting. Okay? What do you think are some of the powers of connectivity? Any thoughts? When we connect, how do we make that beneficial for all of us? By talking, by communicating. Exactly. And the majority of our connections begin with some form of communication. And with communication, I don't know if anybody has perfect communication, right? There's always misunderstandings somewhere. But there's some danger signs of communication that we need to be aware of. There's your withdrawal and avoidance. Have you ever tried to interact with somebody when they don't want to talk, they don't want to solve the issue? What do people do sometimes?
Look away, disinterested, clam up.
Yeah, and just kind of withdraw, right? And a lot of time, and avoid. Now, can you withdraw and avoid right in the presence of somebody? Yeah, you can. Have you ever been talking to somebody and you know they're zoning out, they're thinking about something totally different? Eyes glazed over. They've withdrawn, right?
Yep.
So there's withdrawal and avoidance. There's escalation. Now, we often think of escalation as people getting louder and louder and louder and louder. But escalation isn't always getting louder, but it can be one-upping each other. Man, I had a really rough morning this morning. You know, it's like, well, you think that was rough. Let me tell you what happened to me. Well, you think that was bad. Let me tell you what else happened. And just trying to one-up each other. Ever been in a relationship that's happened to a conversation? Yeah. We've all probably experienced all of these danger signs. And we all have our favorite danger sign. So withdrawal and avoidance, escalation, invalidation. Just not feeling validated. Just not feeling that you're being heard. How do you feel when you're not being heard? Doesn't feel good, does it? You kind of think, well, what's the use? What's the purpose of me even being here, talking with you or communicating with you if you're not going to hear me? There's negative interpretation. And negative interpretation is when somebody says something, the other person thinks the most negative thing possible. It's like, no, don't want to go out to lunch today. And the other person may think, wow, you really don't like me, do you? When in all actuality, the person has another meeting or something else that he needs to do. Okay, so negative interpretation. How do we solve? Yes?
How about that happened recently?
Yeah?
I was trying to make a comment. I knew this family fairly well, and they had an aging parent who really needed a lot of care. Well, this one gal, he was in her home, and I saw her. And I made something, I thought I made a positive comment, like, you know, wow, you're working hard, taking care of your dad, you know. And that's not what she heard. I mean, that was my intent. I don't know what I said. My wife says, honey, you have diarrhea of the mouth.
You botched that one is what
But
she
anyway,
said, huh?
yeah, but, well, guess what happened? Her sister is one of our dearest friends. And she called my wife and said, your husband said that my sister was doing a bad job taking care of our dad.
Wow. See, it can be totally twisted, huh?
They were mad at me, the whole family, for saying things like that. And going, that's not what he said.
So how do you solve something like that?
Hey, there was no resolution. It's been weeks, and they're still mad, and I'm still wondering. I don't know how to get to the bottom of it.
Well, there's different ways you could. Ignore it, right, and hope it blows over. Email, letter. Phone call might not work. They might not answer the phone, though, right? And so looking at different, when you find something like that happening, working and figuring out a way. Yes.
get worse.
Or it could get worse.
Yep,
It
yep.
can always get worse.
Yeah, hard to judge. You know, you're saying sometimes there's what I call benefit of the doubt. If you, you know, my intent, I mean, don't they know me well enough as a friend to realize that's not my nature to jump on something like that? You know,
Well,
but I didn't get the benefit of the doubt in that at all.
Yeah. What plays into communication like that? What kind of day have they had? What kind of experiences have they had?
How were they, their frame of mind when they were
When they
listening?
heard that,
When
yeah.
they
Body
had
language.
misinterpreted what he said, probably.
Yep. Body language. How accurate are we with body language?
Sometimes it says more than what our mouth says.
But we're terrible at interpreting body language. Even people that have taken classes on body language still say, you know, I'm no better after the class than before the class. Because it's just so difficult and so many things play into that. And that leads into collaboration. How do we work together to avoid some of these danger signs? Number one, be aware of them. Right? Be aware of them in ourselves. Do you all realize what your favorite danger sign is? Communication?
No.
Think about it. Watch your interactions for the next week and find out, because there's always one of the danger signs that we tend to go to when we don't feel understood, or it might just be that we're not having a good day and we don't want to deal with something. Yes?
I find one of my danger signs is that after, you know, the first couple sentences, I'll tone out or think, okay, if that's what they're thinking, I'll either, you know, go off on a tangent or, you know, zone out, not listen. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
If it's
and
not
that's-
interesting to you, or if you want to refute or rebut or tell them something else, it can lead to, so listening to the
Yep.
whole conversation what they have.
Exactly, and that's a withdrawal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Raising your voice, is that another?
That'd be escalation.
Some people start raising
Yeah.
their voice.
And a lot of times they compound on each other. If I'm not feeling heard, I don't feel validated, then I might start escalating, right? And so they compound. And I've worked with people that have all four of them are their favorites. Where do you start there? You pick one and you decide, I'm going to work on this specific danger sign this week and see if I can minimize it. In other words, may never eliminate it, but you can get it down.
Okay, I was like, what are the 4 danger signs?
Escalation, invalidation, negative interpretation, and withdrawal and avoidance.
Can you repeat that again?
Escalation, invalidation, negative interpretation,
That's it.
and then withdrawal and avoidance.
Teenagers.
Yes, the acronym is teenager, right?
Teenagers, yeah.
Now-
Teenagers.
We often think of these in marital relationships or personal relationships. How many of us have used these with clients or experienced them with clients?
You try and get somebody to call you back, they just avoid you like crazy.
That's right.
You wonder why. Why are these people avoiding me?
And then you feel invalidated, right? Like not important. And so with collaboration, that's how we start working together. And there's a big element of collaboration that's called influence. Okay, so on April 28th, last year, almost a year ago, there were a number of car accidents on the roads of Utah. One person that was in one of these car accidents her name was Lisa, age 45, married, children. She died as a result of that accident. Now, my daughter knew Lisa. Lisa was her dance teacher. And the same daughter that many years ago said, hey, what, Daddy? Now, much older, she took dance and studied under Lisa at school. Now, watching the social media over the following 24 hours, I was amazed at the influence that Lisa had on so many young lives. My daughter loves Lisa and loves dance because of her interaction with Lisa and the influence. So I ask, whose life are you influencing? Many times we don't know whose lives we are influencing, do we? But we influence positively or negatively every single day. And the hope is that we influence positively. Because as we work together and as we influence each other, we learn that we are beneficial and others are beneficial to us as we work together. Because learning how to work together is basically how we succeed in life, right? And so a good question or a good statement is, when I'm working with this person, the outcome is blank. Fill in that blank. How are we influencing each other? How are we working with each other? Whether it's in business, whether it's in family, whether it's in a club, an organization, where are we influencing? What are the values that are added because of our interaction? So if you think about your wonderful club here, what are some of the things that your club goes out and how does it influence the community?
We encourage young people like crazy.
Okay, and how do you encourage young people?
We award good behavior,
Right.
recognize their goodness that young people have, scholarships,
Uh-huh.
Scouting. We meet with 5-year-olds. There's a lot of things we can do.
Yeah. And think about it. Do you all know what the purpose of your specific club here in Spanish Sport, what that purpose is? And do those in the community really know what your purpose is? And
Our
how,
on goal to teach, just teach.
right. And how do you get that teaching out there? That would be the challenge. How do you get the teaching out there so more people know about the great things that you're doing? And you want people to know about the great things that your Kiwanis Club is doing because that brings more people in, which creates more influence and more goodness. So think about what you can do today to influence somebody else about the Kiwanis Club. Influence can be education. It can be wearing your Kiwanis Club shirt that I see a couple people wearing. And letting people know, hey, we do have a club. And these are some of the great things we're doing. And I know that, lots of people see this, your club meetings, which is great. And that really gets it out there and helps influence. Thinking about the danger signs and thinking about collaboration, some of the other things that play into it, do you think my Tourette's plays into any collaborating with others? Never, right? Every day. I've had people stop and look at me funny. I've had people ask me, and I appreciate when people ask me. But I don't let that get me down. I taught at UVU for 9 years. Well, I also learned that I needed to be up front and tell people about that Tourette's. Because if I waited 2 or 3 weeks in, I'd have students come up to me, thanks for sharing, because now I know what's going on. I've had a hard time the last couple weeks because I've been trying to figure it out. So being open and honest in relationships, again, strengthens that red thread that connects us all together. You had a comment?
No, I was just saying that when you're open and honest, and then you're educating people,
That's right.
and then there isn't that prejudgment.
Yep.
If you're
Less than a chance for misunderstanding.
Yes.
less,
Now,
Still a chance.
still a good chance.
but it strengthens, like you said.
Yep. Now, I was in my mid-20s when I came to grips with my Tourette's. I was already married. I was getting my bachelor's degree up at the University of Utah. I know I'm down here in Utah County, but you know, I brought a little blue with me with my red thread. And maybe that's why I like the red thread so much, right? University of Utah. But I was up at the University of Utah working with a couple professors that encouraged me to start talking about my Tourette's. I was working at the Boys and Girls Club at the time. And yes, the kids made comments, but when people made comments back then, I don't care if you were an adult or a child, when they made a comment, I withdrew and I avoided because I hadn't come to grips with it on myself. And I needed that to happen. And so, as I was working with these two professors, they encouraged me to talk to the boys and girls at the club. Now, I was working with 10 and 11-year-olds. Great age, but also an age that loves to kind of poke it, specifically at adults, right? They can. And so, I sat them down in a room, talked to them about Tourette's, showed them a video, and said, okay, it's a non-issue from here on out. So again, I was going back into my withdrawing. I opened up, and now I'm going to withdraw. And sometimes we do that because it allows us to kind of test the waters and see where's it going to take us. And so, the next day, I was out in the game room. And there were these two little boys that tend to be thorns in my side, shall we say. They were my challenge. Well, they were standing over to my right, and two other children came up and started teasing me about my Tourette's. You know, before I could say anything, these two boys that previously were my challenge walked up, looked at the other two kids who were teasing me and said, knock it off. We talked about this yesterday. Whoa. Instantly, those two boys and I connected on a whole different level. So, disability and ethnicity brought us together through that one interaction. And because of that one interaction, obviously, I remember it 20 plus years later. It's made a huge impact on my life. To the point that I can talk about it. Yes, I have Tourette's. You're going to see me tick. You may hear me yell. But I'm okay. And what made me okay was two 10-year-old boys. So again, I ask, whose life are you influencing? Whose life are you making that significant of a difference in? Because we all have that ability. When you're reading to a 5-year-old, could you be that huge of a difference in their life just by reading to them? Yes. You may never know what impact you make on lives of others. But that's okay. Have you ever, yes?
I think the title, as I understood it, was Improving Family Relations. So I'm thinking in terms of what you're saying, not only about business, but family.
Uh-huh. Right.
And we raised 6 children. And, you know, all of this applies.
Yes.
You know, what kind of relationship have I got with this? And there was a couple of them that my wife just personality clashed. And there was a couple in the same way, you know, thank goodness there was 2 of us trying to raise these kids.
Right.
But I see this happening and, you know, and it changed stages. I mean, I just laughed at my wife the other day. I said, I'm so glad that that child and you are friends now. You sure battled.
Yes.
You know, she could say the same thing about me. But, you know,
Right.
so significant. Who is gonna, what I've learned is if a child rebels against you, over an issue, it seems like they take it all away and they'll rebel against everything you stand for, everything good you ever taught them. Does that sound right?
Well, it's called definition, or like John Michael said earlier, that's a definition for the word teenager.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why it's so important to have good leaders, scout leaders, community leaders, church leaders.
Somebody relate to them.
That's right. But yes, these principles, as I've mentioned, are not only business, but family. Because, again, what's the difference between a family relationship and a business relationship? Context. Because,
And maybe a little more intimate
right,
in most
right.
cases.
Yes, kind of throwing that under the context as far as what you do and how you do it.
There aren't
Because
any
all the
grandpas
principles-
or grandmas here, except for me.
There's what?
Grandpas or grandmas. Are you a grandpa? Well, I see that. It's easier to do it when you're a little bit removed, like a grandparent.
Yes.
I can see, grandkids, I try to watch for.
As a grandparent, there's a whole different role than a parent. And it should be. It should be. The role of a grandparent should not be to, with the grandchildren, but to be more, connect more. More of a friend, maybe.
My daughter says, Dad, you can tell the kids no sometimes. And I said, I'm not gonna do that.
Well, there's still those three roles that we play. The parent, the child, and the sibling. And sometimes even as grandparents have to say what goes, right? Because that's what children need, is a good solid foundation and solid adults to follow. And that's the huge benefit of the scouting program, is to be able to interact with multiple adults. And sometimes it's like, yeah, we're right there friends. Other times it's like, I have to lay down the law and say this is right and this is wrong. And work together. So the third C is consequence. So now that we've connected, now that we collaborate, what's the benefit? How do we benefit from our connections and collaborating?
Hopefully you'll have some positive outcomes.
Positive outcomes, that's exactly what we want, isn't it? Okay?
Strengthen relationships.
Strengthen relationships. Who's in charge of your own destiny?
You are.
We are. Oh, our wife, right? Is that what you're saying? We are in charge of our own destiny, and I'll let this work out later, right? Need help?
Good.
Step in, right? Okay. But the consequence, we're in charge of our own destiny. There's a little principle called the ABCD principle. A stands for activating event. Life happens. Do we have any control over life happening? Can any of you change the fact that you came today? You're already here. You can't change that, right? Okay. We really don't have any control over life happening, do we?
Not much.
No, I'd say 0%. I can't control what you do. That's life happening. That's life. Now, B is belief or behavior. Do we have any control over our own beliefs or our own behaviors? How much percent do you think? 100%. That's right. And then C is consequence. Do we have any control over consequences? No, we don't. Well, why do I say no? What are consequences directly based off of? A plus B equals C. Yep. Exactly. Life happening, plus, which we have 0%, right? Plus our own beliefs or behaviors. So what's going to create the consequence? We can't control consequences, whether it's positive or negative. We only can do what we want, what we can do. Now, do we like to control B, or do we like to control A or C?
Good point.
We focus so much energy on A and C. We focus so much energy on trying to make people, whether it's children or other people.
Those drivers on the freeway that are cutting you off.
Yeah, yeah. We try to control what they do. But can we? We can't. We still have our choice. They still have their choice. And so come C with consequences, or I'm sorry, D with is dispute. We need to dispute our consequences. Did I get what I wanted? If the answer is yes, maintain the same belief or behavior. If the answer is no, what do we need to do? Change B, change our belief or behavior. Is that easy to do? No, because it takes change, and change is uncomfortable. But change is good, and change happens constantly. Maybe the only constant in life is change. Okay. Now, there's also the commonality that plays into this. For instance, I was a juvenile probation officer many, many years ago. I loved the job. I was a juvenile probation officer up in Magna and Kearns area. Well, getting pulled over by a police officer as a probation officer, there's a commonality there, isn't there? And do you think the interaction is going to be different? It's going to be different, right? And there depends on the difference what's going to happen. But obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but the police officer, once he finds out that I'm a probation officer, and yes, this happened, kind of lets her relaxes a little bit because of that commonality and kind of understanding each other. But those can be positive or negative. Now, relaying that, getting pulled over by a police officer to the ABCD, speed limit is 70 miles an hour. That's A. My belief or behavior is I can go faster than that, so I do. My consequence is to get pulled over. Now, when I get pulled over, my behavior was the police officer's activating event, is A. So do you see how that cycles through? My B is somebody else's A, and then we figure out the C for both of us. But with the commonality and all these activating events and how my behavior affects others, how interacted or interconnected are we as individuals and people? Very. Okay, I've known John Michael here for 9 years almost. 10 years, something like that. My interaction with him affected my interaction with all of you, whether I've met you or not. Because it was positive, okay? It was positive. But he shared with me about the Kiwanis, and so what he shared with me, I kind of had a vision of what it would be like to talk with you and to share with you. Okay? And so that affected my interaction, my knowledge of you. Now,
With the internet, we got that multiplied.
oh yes, huge multiplier of the internet. My work with my clients, has my work with my clients, people that you've never met, affected my interaction with you? Yeah, it does. Because of that interaction, I am who I am because of my past experiences, which plays right into the ABCD. I choose my behavior, which I choose a lot of the way that I respond to all my experiences. Now, and think about it this way. Have you ever known somebody, and then you go talk to somebody else, and you know this person, you know them, but you really never interacted with them. And then you talk to somebody else you really know well, and they tell you something negative or positive about this person over here. How do you treat this person over here the next time you see them? Different?
Yeah, sure, depending on your relationship with that first person.
Yeah.
If it's a very good relationship, obviously you might prejudge that person based on your friend's, bias or
Yeah. And how fair is that?
interpretation. Not fair, and it's unfortunate, but that's what we do many times.
Right.
Most of the time.
What about with our children? Do we do the same thing with our children?
Oh, yeah, jump to conclusions.
If I call home and my wife tells me something that's happened with one of the kids, well, I'm going to walk through that door totally different than if my wife called me and said, Dallin, who's my son, just came home with straight A's on his report card. That would be much different than her telling me that something negative happened.
Missed school today or
Slept school. Right. Huge difference. Now, can I still go in with an open mind?
should.
Should. It's a very difficult technique to learn, though, isn't it? And so my challenge to you is to look at the ABCs, Ds, and figure out what are you going to do differently to focus more on B instead of A or C. And dispute your consequences to really determine what is it that you can change to make your life better. And by making your life better, who else's life do you make better? Those around you. Your children, your employees, your co-workers, everybody. Because you generally become a happier person. How many would like to increase your happiness? Let me tell you how to do that. Give you a homework assignment. Every night before you go to bed, write down 3 gratitudes. Okay? And not just gratitudes, but why. The formula I use is I'm grateful for blank because blank. And it's really important to put down the because. And there's actually science and research behind that. There was a nationwide study, I believe it was in 2000-2001 time period, that showed people that wrote down their 3 gratitudes every night for just 1 week showed decreased signs of depression and increased signs of happiness directly after the experiment, and a full 6 months later. That's based off 1 week.
Well, you tend to compress those things and have better dreams too.
More positive dreams.
Yeah, more positive
More
dreams.
positive dreams, if that's what you're focusing on.
After a week, you run out of things being grateful for.
If you run out of things to be grateful for, come see me. I will help you. Because yes, your gratitudes need to be different every night. Okay? Maybe I can be thankful for my wife every day for a different reason. Yes?
I'm a member of the LDS Church.
Mm-hmm.
Our bishop, Rick, asked me and my wife to give Thanksgiving talks on Thanksgiving Sunday, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And so we were thinking about that the whole week, and that's had a major impact on both of us still. We're in April.
Yeah,
And
well,
it still is.
at 6 months.
Yeah. So we were doing that without knowing it. We were just thinking of things we were thankful for we could present these talks, and major outlook. I mean, helpful.
Yeah.
Good exercise.
Yeah. So imagine if you did that for 1 week.
Everybody still went to sleep during our talk.
That's okay. You benefited.
You only need to do it for 3 to have the habit.
Yep. So imagine just doing that just for 1 week. How would your life change?
Try.
What would happen if you did it for 3 months or 6 months? How how would your life change?
I think it'd be very positive.
Yes. And how would that change influence others?
Well, they've seen that happen. I know that my daughter says that they've done that at Salem Hills High School, and it's been huge.
Well, the internet,
Yeah.
you know, you see little cycles go through the
Right.
social media.
Yeah, and it's huge. I think it helps teenagers out especially.
Mhm.
I think they did a lot just because they had the suicides. And so it helps out tremendously.
It does.
for them to do that.
So I challenge you to do that every night. Handwrite it though. Don't do it on a computer. Handwrite it. There's power in handwriting. You connect more with the gratitude when you're handwriting and not just typing. So I challenge you to do that for the next week, and check up with each other in a week or next time you all meet to determine where are you at. Because accountability is also a positive consequence of collaborating with those that you've connected with. And if we can hold each other accountable, we tend to improve and do better ourselves, don't we? So, just recapping all the challenges I've given you today. Focus on the ABCDs and determine how you can improve your life by focusing on yourself rather than the behavior and actions of others.
Focus on the B.
Yes, focus on the BB students, right? Gratitudes. Write down 3 gratitudes a night and see how that affects your life and check up on each other. And I ask again, when you do these, whose life are you influencing? So think every day, at the end of the day as you're doing the gratitudes, think back throughout the day. Number 1, who's influenced me today? That'll actually help you with your gratitudes. And number 2, whose life did I influence today? I know that if you focus on these principles that are embedded in the connectivity, collaboration, and consequence, you will improve your life and the life of those around you. So go forth, influence, and conquer.
Stay right up here for a second. We're on TV, and I'd like to give you a chance for a shameless plug. Tell about your practice, if you have one. Do you have a practice here in Spanish Fork?
I do. I have a small practice actually up in Provo, but my main focus is training companies and groups.
Good.
I speak a lot about relationships, and I speak a lot on life balance, and I do that, and then my speaking.
Do you have a website?
Yes, speaking, training.
Give your website so people can get hold of you if they need to.
It's www.drruss.com. So www.drrusspeaks.com. drrussspeaks.com.
DrRussSpeaks.com.
Yes, drrussspeaks.com.
On behalf of our club, I'd like to really thank you for your time and coming down to visit with us today.
Appreciate
It
it.
really makes a big difference for us to have wonderful speakers to come to our club.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.